and the region called Eastern Europe and Caucasus in the EBRD slang, but it's also known as Eastern Partnership or EAP region. Just to try to navigate. The COVID-19 crisis has caused a sharp economic downturn in 2020 across the countries of EAP region. Common channels of transmission include the impact of public health measures and lockdowns put in place in most countries to contain the spread of the virus, and a drop in external demand. Reduced demand for oil and slump of prices caused additional problems in Azerbaijan, while the collapse in tourism has badly affected Georgia. And not to forget, on top of all that, political situation in the countries has been not easy, and in 2020, it was further marked up by political instability, including in Georgia and Moldova in their transition to power, reform reversal in Ukraine, and protracted public protests following the presidential elections in Belarus. Long-standing tensions between Azerbaijan and Armenia erupted into open conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh in the second half of 2020. As a result of all this, GDP in the region as a whole is expected to fall by 4.1% in 2020, and recovery is expected in 2021 with growth averaging 2.5%. However, sound economic management and strengthened banking systems, which are results of the reform efforts supported by EBRD, together with international development partners, taken after 2014-2015 crisis in the region, proved to be strong assets in the current crisis. Held by initial low fiscal deficits and declining path of public debt, professional central banks succeeded to sustain market pressure at the beginning of the crisis in March and swiftly stabilize investors' expectations. IMF support remained an important source to augment government-owned fiscal space in Armenia, Moldova, and Ukraine, while Azerbaijan drew upon its SOFA's reserves, its state oil wealth fund of Azerbaijan. The main challenge ahead will be consolidate public finance and return to the pre-crisis debt levels. Inflation has been picking up in most of the countries on the back of rising food prices. Additional pressures expected from oil price in quarter two. Reform momentum was weakened in Eastern Europe even before the stroke of pandemic, while it was moderating in the Caucasus. Political volatility will continue in the countries across the region. And February 21, you've seen it already, was marked by protests in Georgia over the arrest of the opposition leader and subsequent resignation of Prime Minister, as well as public protests in Armenia with demands for Prime Minister Pashinyan to resign. Unfortunately, COVID did not go away with the end of 2020 and will dominate the agenda in 2021 as well. Move to recovery and positive growth is in fact depend on the success of national vaccination program rollout or achieving herd immunity, whichever comes first. However, post-COVID-19 recovery offers an opportunity to give an additional impetus to structural reforms and resume uninterrupted convergence process. Structural reforms will be crucial for the EEC countries to benefit from the expected nearshoring of global supply chain and lifting the mediocre growth rates. A couple of words on the status of the banking systems in the region, which is strengthened as a result of the reforms after the previous 2014-2015 crisis, but it is still unfinished business. Countries whose banking system is dominated by private sector banks have more developed financial system. They are more capable of supporting the economy, but we are not there yet in the EAP countries. After the last banking crisis, Ukraine and Moldova have advanced in the overhaul of the banking systems in the last 6 years, but credit penetration rate is still very low. In Azerbaijan, the restructuring of banking system after 2015-2016 crisis remained an unfinished business. Belarus banking system is dominated by state-owned banks, and after gradual phasing out, directed lending to state-owned enterprises returned with full force during the last year crisis. In this respect, Armenia and Georgia look better than their peers, with credit to economy to GDP ratio is in excess of 62%. In the region, however, the region itself, however, can be attractive for investments due to its good trade location, its proximity to Europe, and also links to Eurasian Economic Union, with Armenia and Belarus members, and Moldova is an observer. It has educated labor force, good potential for technological and IT industries, and it could be examples of Armenia, Belarus, and Ukraine. Developed manufacturing sector, Ukraine and Belarus. Rich natural resource base and infrastructure connection to Europe, Azerbaijan. Abundant sources of renewable energy, solar and hydro. All three countries in the Caucasus and Ukraine, and good potential in agriculture sector across the region. Over time, EBRD investments in the EAP countries reached 27.5 billion euros, almost 13,500 projects. It's 1,340 to be precise projects over time, including investments in 2020 close to 2 billion euros in 90 projects, despite the impact caused by the pandemic. The bank's success and challenge in 2020 was driven by strong performance in the small economies of Armenia, Georgia, and Moldova, with overwhelming private sector focus. In Belarus, however, the bank swiftly moved to a less for less approach in response to political developments and slow reform progress. 2020 stood under the banner of COVID-19 emergency response measures. Key efforts were concentrated on rapid design and implementation of emergency financing packages, such as resilience framework and vital infrastructure support program, as we call it, to support the existing and new clients to withstand the pressures caused by the crisis through vital liquidity support and emergency investments, as well as policy dialogue promoting economic reforms and improvement in the overall resilience of the economy. We spent a lot of efforts supporting SMEs in our countries through boosting their liquidity position and through advisory services. We provided emergency financing to the banks and the money to be on lent to the SMEs. We rolled out the COVID-19 rapid advisory response to the SMEs in Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, and Moldova, helping them to withstand crisis pressures through better financial management and digitalization. We provided liquidity support for existing clients in Ukraine and supported clients in financial sector, as well as financed energy-related projects in Armenia. In Georgia, more than 60% of overall bank activities has been made under the COVID-19 response flag. For illustration, want to make a couple of examples. One is the first example is the emergency financing package of $25 million provided to Georgia Healthcare Group. And this financing was provided under the resilience framework developed by EBRD to fight the COVID-19 crisis. The funding was processed in record times and aimed to convert normal hospital wards into facilities suitable for treating infectious diseases, as well as enhanced testing facilities, boosting the country's very much needed healthcare capacity and standards during the fight with pandemic. Another example is $10 million to Georgia National Provider of Air Traffic Navigation and Monitoring Services under the Vital Infrastructure Support Program. The project helped the company meet its liquidity needs during the COVID-19 crisis. In Armenia, the bank provided two loans totaling 35 million euro to national grid operator to finance improvements in energy networks, as well as providing liquidity enhancement to the company under the resilience framework to withstand the crisis pressures. The bank made policy activities. Our investments actually come hand in hand with the policy activities, and we support the policy reform, the vital economic reforms in countries. And main policy activities continue focusing laying on regulatory and legislative foundations for green energy transition, developing the financial sector through banking sector reform, developing of local currency financing and local capital markets, and strengthening corporate governance and enhancing investment climate. Support for developing energy markets included development of legal framework for renewable auctions regulation in Ukraine, Moldova, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan. In Armenia, such activities resulted in financing our first competitively tendered solar photovoltaic project in the region. It's a massive solar plant, energy sector reform and development of competitive gas market in Ukraine, energy efficiency laws in Georgia, the law on natural gas in Moldova within the framework of Moldova Gas Interconnection Project. Further rollout of our Green Cities program in Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, and Azerbaijan, with the first signing in Ganja, Azerbaijan, Chisinau, Moldova, and Khmelnytsky, Ukraine, and further progress on implementation in Tbilisi and Batumi, Georgia, and Lviv, Ukraine. All in all, we have 13 cities under various stages of development covered by the Green Cities framework, which are in the EEP region, and it's around 1/3 of the green cities, all green cities across the bank countries of operation. We maintain an exceptionally high level of engagement and policy dialogue, both transaction and non-transaction related, promoting banking sector reform in Ukraine, Moldova, and Belarus. The bank signed 3 local currency swap facilities with a view towards stepping up more local currency lending in Azerbaijan, Moldova, and Ukraine in the coming years. And it's extremely important, especially for the SMEs. We also assisted the countries in the region with development and implementation of legal and regulatory reform to support the derivatives market in Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Belarus, and facilitate local bond issuance by IFIs. Significant share of policy dialogue and investment activities is dedicated to gender and economic inclusion issues, which could be illustrated with example of 2 Georgian projects I just made a minute ago. In case of Georgian healthcare group, apart from the investment activities and objectives, the project also supports the company in defining and implementing skills and standards for nursing and midwifery professionals in associations with the Minister of Health and Minister of Education. And this would create new opportunities, actually creates new opportunities for young women and men in the labor market to boost healthcare standards in the front line of Georgia's pandemic recovery. And in the case of Georgian navigation project, our investments have been supplemented by technical assistance component, supporting the clients and introducing new internship program to increase the share of women within its talent pipeline. We maintain exceptionally high level of engagement and policy dialogue, both transaction and non-transaction related, covering judicial reform and the rule of law in Ukraine and Moldova, enhancing the investment climate, predictability and level playing field, strengthening of corporate governance in key state-owned enterprises and state-owned banks, which is closely coordinated with OECD. We work on digitalization and public procurement reform, in particular e-procurement platform, Ukrainian reform architecture program specifically targeting comprehensive Ukrainian reform package, and business ombudsman institution in Ukraine. National Investment Council, supporting national investment councils in Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Moldova, and we have ongoing efforts to establish the investment council in Azerbaijan. We also tried to establish an investment council in Belarus, but we had to put on hold this at the moment. On the cross-regional integration, I can say that we also support cross-regional projects and investments within the region, as well as support for regional companies to invest outside the region. And let me make a couple of examples of our cross-regional activities. We have our trade facilitation program, which continue to promote the region export competitiveness. It supported last year 566 transactions for more than 500 million euros, which accounts for about 15% of all trade transactions supported by the bank across the whole EBRD region last year. We committed 20 million euro of portage equity participation in Westmold Transgas. It's in the skill of Romanian Transgas to co-finance Moldova-Romania gas interconnection project. In Belarus, we did a lot of work last year in the private sector, and we provided 7 million euro equivalent to SME credit line to Belaruski Narodny Bank, a subsidiary of Bank of Georgia. We financed 10 million euro SME loan to a leading Belarusian garment producer to upgrade local facility and expand production to Kazakhstan, Turkey, and Uzbekistan. As well as we provided 130 million loan to an international agribusiness company with regional roots to further transportation of animal feed to subsidiaries in Ukraine. Then I will just be over soon, just trying to finish. Yeah. And also, obviously, whatever we do, it's not possible to do without international cooperation with our international development partners. We work closely with European Union, international bilateral donors, multilateral development banks, and international organizations to pursue objectives in developing and assisting the governments in our country's operation in the EAP region by promoting important economic reforms, enhancing the investment climate, enhancing international connectivity and integration, including through development of infrastructure and trade facilitation, promoting green agenda, including renewable energy and private sector involvement in infrastructure, including PVPs, promoting gender equality and economic inclusion, and assisting our clients in building their capacity in project preparation and implementation, which is very important work, and helping SMEs to grow, becoming more competitive through investment and business advice, and enhancing the access to finance, including in local currency. I would stop here, and thank you very, very much for your attention. My contact detail here, and whatever questions you may have, you also may send to me or to my colleague Christian Parsunk, and the emails also on the slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Evgeny.